When I was 16 years old, I met a woman on the side of the road in West Africa who shared a sentence with me that changed the rest of my life. I grew up in San Jose, California in the South Bay, and I was in the shadow of these creative juggernauts like Apple, Pixar, Lucasfilms, and I knew early on I wanted to be a part of something big, something that felt like it mattered. And at that same time, low-budget independent filmmaking was coming on the scene, right? Technology was catching up, and cameras were getting accessible to make documentaries. And my high school at the time offered a documentary film class. One of my best buddies came to me and goes, "Do you want to get the easiest A of your life?" And I was like, "Obviously, I want that." And he was like, "Follow me." And I walked into my documentary film class, and I fell in love. And I knew instantly it was something I wanted to sink my teeth into. I just didn't know where to start. I didn't have a story to tell. And the church that my family went to growing up supported an organization that sent doctors and nurses around the world to provide medical attention to people who needed it most. So I thought, bingo, that's my story. So I go to the executive director, I go, "Listen, 16-year-old Jake wants to go with you to West Africa and tell this story." He's looking at me, he's like, "You want to go with a UN escort behind rebel lines into a country ravaged by civil war, and you want to tell that story?" I was like, "That's me." And he was like, after some back and forth, I finally convinced him, and he said, "Fine, come on." So then I go to my parents, I say, "Mom, Dad, listen, I'm going to Ivory Coast, West Africa, and that's what I'm doing next." And my dad looks at me and he goes, "Well, I'm a fire captain, I know triage, I know wound treatment, I can be of help. If you're going, I'm going." So my mom said, "Well, I spoke French in high school, they speak French in Ivory Coast, if you two are going, I'm going." My sister goes, "Well, if you three are going, then that means the house is going to be empty. I'm staying right here." And so off we went. I spent 10 of the most life-changing days of my life in Ivory Coast. And near the end of the trip, we were packing up our camp, and I saw across the road this woman, and she was standing there with this bag, this hand-woven bag. And I remember it really caught my eye because it looked like a bullseye, the way that the fabric was woven together. I thought, I'd love to have a bag like that to take home with me. And so I grab a translator. I'm like, "Will you help me really quick? Will you come and translate this for me?" So we go across the street, and as I get closer, I see this woman. And as I approach, I ask the translator, I say, "Will you ask her where she got this bag? Will you ask her if it was from a local artisan or the market? I want to get a bag like this." And as he's translating it to her, I see her start to take the bag off. I was like, "Oh, no, I don't want her bag." Bear in mind, this was a country that was absolutely devastated by the war. This was likely her only bag. And so I said, I think that we're not understanding. I don't want that bag. I just want to buy, I can buy one. And through the translator, she looks at me, and she says, "You're never too poor to give, and you're never too rich to receive. Take the bag." And that sentence has reverberated through the center of my being for the rest of my life until I stand in front of you today. So I went home and I cut the film together. I showed it to the nonprofit and I said, "Here's what I managed to create. Let me know what you think." And to my surprise, they liked it. They were like, "Would you be interested in being our media producer?" I was like, "I have no idea what a media producer does, but that sounds very official. I would love to." And so I set off, and I got invited to go to Morocco, Tajikistan, and back to West Africa, all while juggling Algebra 2 classes and before I could legally drink. And I realized at a young age the power of storytelling, the power of the visual image, how it can change someone's mind, it can change someone's heart, it can move them to action, that they would actually be drawn to change their behavior because they've been emotionally charged. And so after I graduated high school, I moved out of my parents' house, I went down to Los Angeles, I got my film degree from the Art Center in Pasadena, and it was time to start making money. I was on my own, and so I did what a lot of filmmakers did. I turned to commercial filmmaking. So I slowly but surely started to build up my resume and the reel of companies I was working with, and things started to stack on top of each other. And I found myself working with brands like Chevrolet, brands like Pepsi, brands like Google. And eventually, I was a part of a campaign that ended up winning a Cannes Lion. Professionally, things were really on track. And along the way, I met a girl, and on May 23rd, 2014, we started our own journey. We started our own path. And things were starting to stack, and I was seeing that there was a trajectory and everything was heading in the way that I had sort of intended it to go, and then everything stopped. March 2020 happened. I don't know if you guys remember that time very well, but as a documentary filmmaker who tells stories about people, I didn't have any work. Someone who gets on planes and travels was sitting at home with no way to make a living. And so when 2 weeks turned into 2 months, I couldn't see a foreseeable end to this. And my finances were only going in one direction, and it wasn't up and to the right. And so it gave me a really interesting opportunity, and I think a lot of us will resonate with this, is that it gave me a moment to pause, to ask myself, if tomorrow things open back up, and I start back on the track that I was on, will I be happy with where I'm going? Am I satisfied? And if I'm being honest with you guys, I wasn't. The answer was no. There was something inside of me that felt like there needed to be more. There must have been more than just this transactional activity of being a filmmaker for someone's brand, that I had to be a part of something that felt like it meant something. And so I went to my wife and I said, babe, I have an idea. And she was like, before you get there, I have something to share with you. And I got some news. And it was the best thing that could have happened to us. We found out we were having a little guy. And that really puts things in perspective. That really makes you sober up. And she said, what's your idea? I was like, okay. I was like, have you heard of the Google 20% rule? She was like, what? If you guys don't know, Google allows their engineers to take 20% of their time and dedicate it to a project that has nothing to do with their current jurisdiction. Out of that have come things like Google AdSense and Google News. And so I said, I want to take that model, but I want to do something a little different. I want to do 20% for humanity. She looks at me, and she looks down over her pregnant belly and looks back at me and goes, 20%? I was like, 20%. She was like, deal. Because she saw the fire in me that I needed to do something that was bigger than what I was working on. So the next day, I sat down in my backyard, I set my camera up, and I pressed record. And I said to an audience, I said, if you're a nonprofit anywhere in the world, I want to fly to you and I want to give you a film for free. You spend no money. I will pay for my transportation. I will pay for my food. I will pay for my lodging. And in return, I'm going to give you something that companies 10 times your size normally can afford, and you won't spend $1. And that was the idea, that I was going to give my gifts and my talents away with no strings attached, so that way I could activate meaning and joy in my life. And the craziest thing happened. After I posted that, I started to see that there was wind at my back and that there was people who were reposting it and sending it and tagging. And people said, I'm a designer, can I make you a logo? I'm a graphic artist, can I build your website? I'm a film and music licensing company. We want to give you our entire library for free. Because I think that the world responds when they see that you're doing something where the attention is pointed outward, where it's not so self-focused, but it's focused about how can I be an active ingredient in the world around me. Over the course of 2 months, I got 75 submissions from all over the globe. And while I was sifting through it, I was looking at who would I select for this first nonprofit, and on social, I saw that Sony had just released a brand new camera. It was a compact cinema camera, documentary filmmaker's dream. I was like, that's what I need. And so I did what any logical person does. I reached out to the director of marketing of North America, Sony. I go, hey guys, I'm doing this thing, and I think you should give me that camera for free. So I sent it out, really didn't expect to hear anything in return. And 4 days later, I get a message saying, Jake, the team and I have reviewed your material. We love it. Send us your shipping address. 4 days later, the camera was on my doorstep, and I picked it up, and off I went. The first film that I made was in Los Angeles, in South LA. Compton, Inglewood, and Watts, the organization was focused on kids living in that region. They were helping them get job placement, college prep, and getting them ready for the next stage of their life. I built a community around me, and I felt the connection with the guys who ran the organization. I came back, I cut the film together, and I said, hey, Sony, thank you guys so much for lending me this camera. This is what I was able to create. A couple days later, I get a message. We're showing the film to the president of Sony this afternoon. I was like, that escalated quickly. I didn't see that coming. Let me know what they think. And so I get a message back saying, can you get on a call with us? I was like, you tell me what time zone you need me on, and I'm there. So I get on the call, and there's like 1,000 people in the Zoom meeting, and I'm just like, hello, everybody. And they say, your film has inspired us. We want to do something similar. We've decided that we want to give away 10 films to 10 nonprofits around the United States. We want to give each one of them $100,000. 50 grand in cash, 50 grand in Sony gear. And by the way, we want you to direct all 10 films. I went from seeing my finances dwindling and giving away my gifts, and 3 months later, I had landed the biggest campaign of my life. When I was at a point where I felt empty, the irony was that I had to empty myself a little bit further to be filled up. And so one of the things that was really interesting was filmmakers started reaching out and saying, I want to go. I want to do what you're doing. I want to use my gifts and skills and talents for free because I want to have meaning and purpose in my life. And so I decided I'm going to create a nonprofit. So I created a nonprofit where I connect the best, most world-class filmmakers with nonprofits around the globe. I've connected them and sent them out on assignment. I had 2 filmmakers just come back from Kenya. 2 filmmakers just came back from Lebanon doing a story about Syrian refugee children getting an education. And so for me, I was so proud of these films that we were making because I knew the impact that it was going to have on fundraising and raising awareness. But I didn't want it to stop there. I wanted to actually create something physical, something tangible that you could look and see and taste and touch. And so let me give you an example. I went to Arusha, Tanzania, and I was doing a story on a nonprofit that brought orphan girls off of the street and gave them a home and gave them an education, gave them a place to feel loved, and gave them a place to feel like they belonged. And while I was there, I found out that the school that they had for the kids was getting shut down due to governmental regulations. And so I asked the organization, I said, well, what's it going to take? They said, it's going to cost $300,000 to build this school. I said, well, I've got the camera. I have the means to tell this story, so why don't we do something about it? So I went home, cut the film together, and we got Stance headquarters to open up their warehouse, the sock company down in San Clemente, and they said, as many people as you can pack in here, go for it. So we packed the place out, and I said, if you can financially give, do it. If you can socially give, do it. If you have any means of having an impact on this idea, do it. And 4 months later, we had raised $300,000 and the school's built. The walls are up, foundations poured, the roof is on. Kids are going to go through this school at the beginning of next year. We don't know if the next generation of Tanzanian leaders are going to walk through that hallway. We don't know if the next president is going to hail from Arusha, Tanzania. But what we know is that we use our skills and our talents for something bigger than ourselves. And so I think it's at this point that it's really easy to get caught up in the results, right? The $300,000 for the school or the $1 million with Sony. But let's go back. Let's remember where this all began with a very simple idea. How do I give away my gifts and my talents for free with no strings attached so that I can activate purpose and joy in my life? You see, there's a reason why the saints and sages in our recorded history have spoken on generosity. It's not because they believed in freebies or handouts. It's because they knew that it has a transformative power on the human spirit. It expands you. It elevates you. It invites you into opportunity. It brings you into a new dimension. I'm saying that with experience. I'm saying that with 2 years behind me, where I can say it with confidence. Because abundance is an idea that we all want the outcome of, but I don't believe abundance is an outcome. I believe abundance is an action. And you experience yourself as abundant. If you want to gain financial wealth, go create financial wealth for somebody else. And you realize they had it all along. You can't create something for somebody that you don't already have. If you want community in your life, go connect to people and experience yourself as a connective tissue that brought your world together. I think it's at this point that you have to stop and pause and say, who am I? For me, I'm a filmmaker. I don't know why. I don't know why this made sense to me, but it did. And each one of you sitting here right now has been uniquely designed and uniquely created. That this is your story and your calling, and how can you use your skills and your talents to activate meaning and joy in your life? If you're a baker, you might decide, I want to give away, for a whole day, I'm going to give away cookies for free. Watch, she likes that idea, watch as community gets built around you. If you're a car mechanic, give away an oil change once a quarter and sit back and observe. and see how the world responds to you. I wish I had a math equation I could put on the screen right now that showed you how this stuff works, but I don't. I can just tell you with confidence that it works. For me, it was 20%. For you, it might be 10%, or it might be 5%. Even if it's 1%, when you get in your car tomorrow or when you put your shoes on, ask yourself, who am I? What do I have to give? Because you're never too poor to give. And you're never too rich to receive. Thank you very much.